Dean, would you be able to give us an abbreviated update on your task force work?
Absolutely. I'm happy to do so, and also happy to stick around for questions if that's desired. I'm also really grateful for the opportunity to come to you today to talk to you about the task force on religious diversity and belonging. And the committee is still at work. It is still working on formulating its recommendations, but I'm happy to share with you what we've done, how we organized ourselves, and to give you a sense of how we are thinking about our recommendations. So I thought it might be useful to first simply tell you a little bit more about our charge as we understood it, and then I'll tell you some things about the timeline, the process, how we're thinking about recommendations. So our charge as we understood it was to assess the incidence of reports of experiences of persons from what we might call minoritized religions, specifically to assess incidents of reports of anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents back to at least 2017. To have concern for religious minorities generally, and in particular to capture how Jewish and Muslim students, faculty, staff, as well as those from other religious backgrounds, experience life on grounds. To examine educational opportunities on religions and related cultures, including histories and impact. To assess the university's engagement with faith community leaders, and to make recommendations for improvement. So that's how we understood our charge and commenced our work. We were charged toward the end of the fall semester, just before people left for winter break. So we got our charge at that time and then commenced our meetings in January after the winter break. We spent the month of February on community engagement, including convening some focus groups, gathering data sources. We did not do a new survey. We drew on existing survey information that we had access to and analysis. By March, we were in a position to continue gathering that information and having some preliminary meetings with university leaders who we thought were potentially some key informants for the committee. In April, we began to commenced formulating our recommendations. And in May, and still in June, we are working on finalizing those recommendations, and I expect that by the end of this month, we will be in a position to have discharged our responsibilities and deliver a set of recommendations to President Ryan. We organized our activity in sort of along 4 different streams. So we had an engagement group that was headed up by Dean of Students, Cedric Rucker, and that included conducting the focus groups. They involved students, faculty, staff, and contract workers at the university. And they also collected comments online from members of the UVA community. We had a data group that was chaired by Professor Rachel Wall, who I think is known to some of you, and she spearheaded analyzing survey data on the student experience and religious identity, researched bias and threat reporting and analyzed those data, and surveyed academic and the academic and co-curricular landscape. We had a benchmarking group that was headed up by Vice President Kevin McDonald, and that group compared 13 Chev designated peers and 5 in-state comparators, and they devised a comparison matrix to identify opportunities and some standout features. So I'm happy to share with you, again, we're still formulating our recommendations, we're still engaged in our analysis, but I'm happy to share some high-level observations. The current moment of crisis that we're in is marked by some very strong feelings that impact individuals and shared experiences of belonging and respect on grounds. And members of the UVA community highly value maximizing free expression while also longing for clear understandings of limits and seeing that reflected in institutional action. The moment of crisis also discloses some institutional opportunities, and that's really been the focus of the committee's efforts. How can we make UVA a place that improves that experience really for all students, but particularly for those who may not feel such a strong feeling of belonging or respect. These institutional opportunities include religious identification and related cultural connectivity are important dimensions of diversity within the UVA community, and they could be explicitly integrated into the university's inclusive excellence practice and its academic offerings. The capacities for constructive dialogue and learning across difference enhance the institution's responsiveness and resilience in moments of crisis. And this could be strengthened at UVA through academic offerings, co-curricular programming, training, and modeling. Both Jewish and Muslim members of the community do have experiences of grounds that differ from experiences of others in the community. We knew that. That was a reason for charging the committee in the first place. They do have different experiences from others in the community and from each other. And the reasons for this could be examined and addressed more regularly and not only in moments of crisis. Finally, I'll just, before opening to questions, just conclude with representative topical areas where I am expecting that the committee will formulate recommendations, certainly is deliberating about recommendations for President Ryan. The first is around support services for students, faculty, and staff that are connected with meeting the needs related to religious identification. Thinking about opportunities for gathering and strengthening connections across grounds. Focusing on academic programs, courses, and academic events. Looking for opportunities for greater community engagement, including convening religious leaders in the community more often and making sure that we're welcoming for visitors to grounds. Expanding our inclusive excellence capacity, including religious diversity in inclusive excellence. Thinking about religious accommodations and access to religious accommodations more broadly. Thinking about the relevance of expressive conduct, speech and events, and especially as it relates to our institutional values and reflecting those values. Thinking more about reporting and bias incidents and examining persons' experiences with those processes. Looking at communications, including university statements and other types of communications. And I know that there are other committees who are focused on that, so we're not necessarily making recommendations about it, but simply pointing out the ways in which our work intersects there. And then also thinking about safety and security. Before opening up for questions, I'll just say that the good news from my perspective is that I think we've learned a lot from this process, and undertaking the work of the task force itself has had the effect of creating forums for people to share their experiences and to share their aspirations for the type of community they want to be a part of. I also believe that the committee's ultimate recommendations have the potential to be effective in creating real and lasting positive change, and we should do it because we want all members of our community to have a positive experience here at the university. Finally, I'll say that it has been a true privilege to lead these efforts. It's an extraordinary committee. I've worked with many committees in my nearly 30 years in higher education. This one conducted itself with exceptional empathy, sincerity, and integrity.
Dean, I'm afraid we don't have time for questions. I know that your work is ongoing. I'm sure you'd be willing to come back and share the results of the task force and I also know you would be willing to take questions,
Always.
outside the board meeting.